Okay, like we all know, like I said, if anybody has looked at the curriculum, today is the last class before our live hands-on session. So, and the module that we are covering today is, and I know we called it something else in the curriculum, something like making your reports interactive and stuff. But I have had to give it another name today, which is, I'll share my whole screen so that I wouldn't be struggling with sharing or not sharing. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So today we will be talking about telling stories with data, and I will try to why I chose this topic. What we have on the curriculum is like how to make your Power BI reports more responsive and more interactive. But I decided to call it this because as a data analyst, even though it's nice to create beautiful charts and all of that, it is also important that your report tells a story, because at every point in time you are creating reports that people are going to read or are going to use. And I like to let people know that you need to see the report you are creating as if you're writing a book. And if you write a book, anybody who is a writer here knows that if you write a book, the story has to flow. If it doesn't flow well, people will say things like your story is disjointed, your story is. So you need to approach your reporting as if you're telling a story. And what that means is that it needs to flow. Not only does it need to flow, it needs to be easy for people to navigate from one part of your report to the other. And there are different functionalities that Power BI has made available that help you to actually make your report to flow. It is one thing to just create visuals and lump them up together, and it is another thing to actually tell a story with the reports that you have built. And a few of those functionalities that we will go through today is how to sync slicers, how to use the drill through function, and how to use buttons in Power BI. Now, those three are related to telling a story, and then optimizing your report for mobile view and publishing to Power BI service are two other things that we would cover today. Not necessarily related to storytelling, but yep. So now the first one is, like I said, is sync slicers. And I think what I would do is, instead of going through the whole presentation at once I do a presentation for one point, we would go and do the practical, then we'll come back to the presentation. So sync slicers. I know we've covered slicers sometimes in this class. I was in the class when slicers was covered. So can anybody tell me, first of all, what a slicer is? What's a slicer? I want to come here and see if anybody's hand is raised. So anybody, any takers, tell us what a slicer is. Nobody. That means we will sleep here. If nobody is going to tell us what a slicer is, we might as well sleep here. I will wait though. I have all the time in the world. Anyone want to tell us what a slicer is? If you don't want to talk, you can maybe type it in the chat, but hey, somebody has to tell us. This energy is giving. Just talk what you want to talk, Jerry. Let's go home. It's an alternative way of filtering. A kind of data filter used on data. So the problem is that we don't want to talk. When I now say type in the chat, people are now typing. Okay, better than nothing.
Okay.
So let's hear you, Modupe.
Slicer is like a filter.
It's like a filter that you can use to narrow down maybe the part you make visible, make it easier to access probably a larger
Okay.
data.
Okay, that makes sense. I think something that is common is with all of our answers is I still saying it's a kind of filter, it's an alternative way of filtering. But one thing I just want to emphasize is that a slicer is actually a kind of visual, because that's one of the key differences between a slicer and a filter. A slicer is a visual on its own. That's why you will see it on your canvas. So it's a visual, but it's a visual that functions as a filter. Well, that helps you to select or restrict what the other visuals are showing. So yeah, that's what a slicer is. Thank you to everybody that answered, sorry. So what do I mean when I say syncing slicers? What this simply means is that sometimes you have, for example, 5 pages of a report, and you have the same slicer on all of those pages. And what it means is if you don't sync those slicers, for example, maybe the slicer is a month slicer. If you don't sync the slicer, when you're on page 1 and you select January, when you go to page 2 can be on March, and then you have to select January again, and then you go to page 3, you have to select January again. Go to page 4, you have to select January again. So instead of going through that stress, if you are doing a report, for example, which is a very common use case, maybe all the slicers, so that when the moment you select January on page 1, all the other slicers also set to January. So if it's January review you're doing in the office, you don't have to every time you get to the next page, you have to select January. And you might not appreciate this until when you have, maybe your report has 50 pages and you're having to select January 50 times, when you could have just selected it once and everything is in sync. So as the name implies, it just helps you to synchronize your slicers, as many of them as you have on your report. And I will open my Power BI now so that we can see how that works. I'm going to be using the same data sets that we used for the, I think, class 3. That data set is in the files, is in class 3 files. I've forgotten the name, but I'll find it now. So again, like we know, the data set is an Excel workbook. So I'll go to Excel workbook and I saved it in pictures, textiles, all you need store. Yeah, that's the name of the data set, all you need store. We used it for class 3. So I'll click open. And then going to select the sales sheet and transform data. I'm going to just look at all of the columns and be sure that everything is fine. So yeah, everything looks okay. even though if you want all of these numbers, for example, employee ID, manager ID, because they are not numbers, like yes, they are numbers, but they are not numbers. They are not the kind of numbers like quantity sold that you want to add and subtract. So you can change them to text, but that is not compulsory. But I will just change all of them to text. Product ID, I'll change to text. Store ID, I'll change to text. Pin date is in date and time. I would change this to only dates, especially because the time looks the same in all of them, 12 midnight. So the time is not valuable information. The reason why you do things like this is because, for example, date and time is going to make your model very heavy. So if you don't need the time, you can just change it and keep only the dates. So these things are just like small best practice and make your reports perform well. So close and apply. And then we can start building our visuals. I'm not going to spend time building a ton of visuals because I think we already covered that. But for now, I will just do sales rep. I'll just do sales profits by sales rep. Like let's say
sorry, Yinka. Boxdale has his or her hand up. You have a question?
Oh, okay.
Boxdale, you can
Hello?
unmute and do you
Hello,
want to
can
take
you
the
hear me?
question now? Yeah, go on.
Hello. Okay.
Yeah, go on.
Good evening, Yinka. I just want to confirm, ask a question with regards to the date and time. When you click on the column, for instance, when you have maybe some aside from the dates or the time, you have another information there. For example, they write sales and they put dates there. How do you change everything to dates? Because I tried my hands on something like that and it gave me null. I don't know if you get my question.
So in the title of the column is sales.
Yes, and on that part
But they
where you have
put a date value inside one of the
yeah,
columns.
inside that column there's something like sales, then they put a date beside it, like semicolon date. Do you understand? I don't have an example.
Okay.
So I tried to
Is
change.
it that the sales and the dates are inside the same column?
Yes, it was
And
separated
when you
with a
have separated with a semicolon.
yes, or a colon. I think it's what
When you
just a
have
colon. Yeah.
when you have an issue like that, what you need to do is to split the column.
Okay.
Were you in class when we did data cleaning?
I was in class. Oh.
What you need to do is to split the column. For example, I will do something here and I will just use it to explain how you split a column. I will split this shipping date, and luckily for you, you said they were all separated by a colon or a semicolon.
Yes.
So as long as you have a column or you have data that all of them have a common whatever that is separating them, a common value that is separating them, you can always use split column to separate it. And the way to do it is to click on that column. So you can see now I'm clicking on shipping dates. What I want to do is to separate this column into two. All the number before the first slash should be in one column, and everything after the first slash should be in another column. There are two ways to go about that. There are many ways to kill a cat. You can either right click and come here to, no, well, let me use transform. Come here to transform, and then you look for split column. Can you see split column here? So you can see the description. It says separate elements of a column into multiple columns. Now it's asking me, what do I want to use to split it? because you can really split by many ways. Is it by number of characters? Is it by position? Or you just want the first two, anything, to be in the one column? Is it lowercase to uppercase? Whatever you really want to use to split it. But in your case, what you will use is a delimiter, because you have a colon that is separating the two values you want to separate. So if I click this by delimiter now, it takes me here. So it's asking me what the delimiter is. Because Power BI is smart, it has looked at this thing and it has seen that it has all of them have a dash. Now, see, the question is asking me, do I want to use the leftmost delimiter, the rightmost delimiter, or each occurrence? If I use the leftmost, what will happen is, for this first column, for example, 10 will be in one place, 14/2022 will be in another place. If I use the rightmost, 10/14 will be in one place, 2022 will be in another place. If I use each occurrence, it will separate it into 3 places. Every time it sees a delimiter, it will break it. Every time it sees a delimiter, it will break it. But for this example, let's just use leftmost. And if it was any other delimiter you want to use, see here, it has colon, comma, equal sign, semicolon, space, tab. But if the delimiter you want is not in all the ones that are listed, you just say custom. And then you type it here. You can literally manually type anything you want. If it's page, anything at all. But for our case is a /. So now I'll say okay, and you'll see what will happen. So you see we now have shipping date 1 and shipping date 2. So it has split it into 2 columns. I can just change the heading of this one. So in your case, this will be the sales, and then this will be the date. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, because I was doing this to explain, I would undo this action so that our dates will be fine. Because I'll have both. So okay, our date is fine now. So we can go back home. Okay, so back to where we were. We were where we were. So I was talking about syncing slicers. I would not go into the work of clearing this, editing this guy and making it look fine. We've done all of that in the visualization class. So I'll just create this visual and then I'll go to page 2. I will create, what I did here was profit margin by sales rep. I would also do quantity sold. Quantity sold again by sales rep. This doesn't. Yes, somebody's hand up. Can you see my screen?
No, nobody's standing up.
Okay, but you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Yes,
Okay,
you can.
thank you. Yeah, so for the purpose of this example, we now have 2 pages. Profit margin by sales rep and quantity sold by sales rep. So I'm going to put a slicer on both pages. So I'm going to put this slicer. Let me just make this look a bit nice. Okay, just look at this. Okay, so we have our slicer. What do we want to slice it? Let's slice it by, okay, we have order dates, fantastic. I love order dates because is one of the slicers that you will actually use the most. So let me use month. Of course, there are different ways you can format your slicers to make them look nice. And the particular one that I like is to use tiles. Slicer 13 style tile. Going to just love it. Oh, this date is this date is not looking nice. Yeah, let me use year. Let me use the year in the dates. This will be better. There's only 1 year in the dates. For some reason, maybe because we didn't go through the cleaning, some dates are blank in this report, but I'll just leave it as that. So we have a quarter slicer. Just make it look nice. Some color. Good. So we have a quarter slicer, and then we have profit margin by sales rep. And because I'm lazy and I want to also show you that Power BI is smart, I'm going to just copy this slicer. Instead of going to page 2 to recreate the slicer, I'm going to just copy this slicer and paste it in page 2. You see, the moment I paste it, Power BI is asking me, do I want to sync one or more of the copied visuals can stay in sync with the visual it was copied from? There's only one thing I copied, which is the slicer. So it's telling me that, oh, it's actually possible to sync this guy with the other guy, because it's being smart to know that, oh, since they are both the same thing, I might want them to always show the same thing. But because I want to show you how to do it manually, I would say don't sync. Normally, I would just click that sync and it will be synced automatically. But I would say don't sync. And like I was saying, what that does is, so for example, maybe I'm creating this report. I like to explain like the real life use case of these things. I'm creating this report because in my office, my department, we always have a quarterly review. So I've done a report with a bunch of pages, and every quarter we just come here and use it for our review. And then when we come to page 1, because we're in Q1, we select Q1, and this filters for Q1. Let me add the data labels on this guy so that it makes sense to us. So I put, we came here, we selected Q1 because we're in Q1. So we selected Q1, and then we go to page 2. We have to, again, manually select Q1. Let me also add the data labels here. How to manually select Q1. So you can imagine that we have 5 or 10 pages, and every time we have to keep manually selecting Q1, whatever we are. It doesn't make sense. So for example, now if by the time we're in Q3, we started from here and I change this to Q3, this guy will still be in Q1. And then I have to now change this again to Q3. That is very stressful for everybody. It's not smart. So it's not every time that you sync your slicers. It depends on the use case and what you're using the report for. So what do you do when you want to sync your slicers? You select the slicer and then you go to format. You go to, okay, it's in view. You go to view. Actually, you can also do it from here, but let's just do it from view. From view, you can see all of these things, and then you can see these sync slicers. The moment you click sync slicers, you see all the slicers that you have in this report. So you see them page 1, page 2. We have this slicer on page 1 and this slicer on page 2. And you can really rename your pages. For example, I think this one is profit, and then this one is quantity. When you have lots of pages, it makes sense to rename, to give your, it makes sense to give your pages reasonable names, because for example, like I was saying, if you have 10 pages, by the time you come here and see page 1, page 2, you don't even remember which one contains what information. And there is a possibility that you don't want to sync all of the slicers. Maybe you want to sync only the one in 2 pages or the one in 5 pages, like that. So for example, let me just show you this. So now we have 3 pages. I sync the slicer only on 2 pages, and I will not sync the 3rd page. So what that means, for example, so now let me sync profit and quantity, right? I've synced profit and quantity. Let's close this and go back home. Come to profits. Come to profit, I select Q1. You remember that we were on Q3 before. So now in both quantity and profit, now I select Q1. By the time you go to quantity, quantity is also in Q1. But you go to duplicate of quantity, is in Q3 because I didn't sync it. So you can, it really gives you like a lot of flexibility. You can sync only the ones that, maybe for example, you even did report for like maybe different departments, or so you can really select which ones you want to sync and which one you don't want to sync. You may be asking, there was something else that was shown here, which is this I symbol here. This one is for whether you want the slicer to even show at all. And I will tell you how this can be useful. If I have a page where maybe the number of visuals I have on that page is so plenty that I don't want the visual to show. I don't want the slicer to show, or maybe it just doesn't look nice. And again, that's the beauty of syncing a slicer. Since I have synced these two slicer, I can actually decide that I don't want the slicer to show on this quantity page. So you see it disappears. But because I have the luxury that I have already synced it, what it automatically means is that I can use this slicer on this page to be controlling all the pages, even to be controlling this guy. So even despite that the slicer is not showing, I can still use this one here to control it, and we will test it. So you see this guy now, this guy, because he's in, I think we were on Q1. Just look at this, the first one, this choke is 739, because I want you to know that it will actually change. If you come back here and you change this to Q3, you come back here, you see that it's now 723, so it has changed. So the slicer doesn't even have to like occupy space. So I can use the space to do any other thing I want to do. So what that means is that even if I have 10 pages of report, I can have slicer on all the 10 pages, but the slicer will only be showing on one page. As long as I've synced all of them, I will just use only that one that is showing to be controlling it. And in very extreme cases, you can even have one page that is your slicer page, and all your actual report pages, you would hide the slicers, and then you use the slicer page to control the entire report. And that way, it just makes your life easy. But you cannot do this with duplicate of quantity where the slicer is not synced. So for example, if you don't show this guy, there's no way to actually filter this one without syncing it. But then if you sync it also, then whatever you select here will affect it. So you select Q1, this guy is 739, you go back, you select Q4, it has changed, it's now 297. So it's really like, it's a game changer. It can help your report to look neater if you don't want to have slicers showing everywhere. One slicer in one place, controlling all of them. So that is how to sync slicers. Now that we're done syncing slicers, does anybody have a question on syncing slicers? Syncing slicers is looking like those tongue twister things. Does anybody have a question on syncing slicers? Does anybody have a suggestion on another use case when you may need to sync slicers? I like to spur people to think, because I always say that learning Power BI, learning SQL, learning Excel, learning all those things and knowing how to use them is good. But what is better is knowing when to use what. Because when you are in a real life scenario, you may be working for a boss who does not even know Power BI, and they are not going to tell you, oh, go and build this report and then sync the slicers and whatnot. They're just going to tell you to build the report and what they need the report to do. It's going to be up to you to know which functionality in Power BI you can use to achieve those results. That's why I'm very big on not just understanding the concept or the technical details, but understanding when you would need to use those things. So if nobody has a use case example for us, I will go to the next thing after syncing slicers. After syncing slicers, another thing that can help your reports to flow properly is called a drill through in Power BI. And what is a drill through? Again, like the name implies, is a functionality that lets you go further. There used to be a joke, but some church members say, "Man of God, go deeper." Yeah, I know I'm cracking dry jokes. But like when you already have surface information, but you want to dig deeper into, you want to get more details about that information. And sometimes the page you are using is already filled up. So you don't have space on that page. So you don't have space on that page to show that information. But you also want to, instead of just going to the next page, you want to find a way to direct people to go, like if you want to see further information about this thing, you can find it here. That is when you use the drill through. Like I said, it allows you to move seamlessly from one page to another, and is particularly useful if you are using another page to provide more context on a particular visual without necessarily breaking your storyline. And I would explain to you how you would use a drill through. And before I start the explanation, I also need to add that drill throughs can be used, or they work perfectly when you have a hierarchy. And what do I mean by hierarchies? By hierarchies, I mean something that's, hierarchies, just like hierarchies in real life. It's like when you have a family tree, relationships that flow into each other. And a typical example, for example, if you have data of different states in Nigeria, you can group those states into regions, and then group the regions into states. Sorry, group the regions into the country, and then like that. And a hierarchy can be like, you can have up to 4 to 5 steps, depending on what the case is. And a date is also, I mean, a perfect hierarchy. As you can see, this one is already automatically created here. Days group into months, months group into quarters, and quarters group into years. So you can use hierarchies, you can use drill throughs whenever you have hierarchies. It's a requirement. You cannot use drill throughs if you don't have hierarchies. And hierarchies are not only like this kind of very specific ones. Another thing that can make up hierarchies, for example, is in a company, for example, it's very likely that when you have a manager, there will be different people reporting to that manager. So I think I'm going to change this guy to, instead of this manager, I'm going to, instead of this sales rep here, I'm going to use manager's ID. That's because I'm assuming that a number of sales reps will report to a manager. And there's a way, I mean, there are ways to verify that. You can just go to your data view and go to, if I click manager ID 1, you see there a number of sales rep under him. You click manager ID 2, there are other sales rep under him. And another thing, I think to just verify that this is really a proper hierarchy, I will just quickly, because again, if this was data that you know properly, you would know that, you would know if whether or not it's a proper hierarchy. But to be double sure, I will just create this dummy table, manager ID and sales rep. Now sales rep go here. Good, so we can see manager 1, these are the sales rep under him. Manager 2, these are the sales rep under him. Manager. So this is typically the kind of data that you use for drill throughs. And I can show you again, just like I said, it could be year, quarter, and month. If we remove manager and sales rep and put year, quarter first. Year, quarter, month, day. This is also a typical hierarchical, just that unfortunately. This can also be used for a hierarchy, but in this case, we will just use So when would you need to use a drill through? I'm going to duplicate this and do quantity sold by manager. So now we have two tables here showing profits and quantity sold by manager. So now I want to create a page for each individual manager to be able to see are doing. To create that page, let me just, because I'm lazy, I don't want to redo all of this. I'll duplicate this page. I'll call it sales rep. And then I'll put here, instead of manager ID, I will put sales rep. And here also I will put sales rep. I hope you guys don't mind that I'm going the lazy way, but it's how my life is. I like to do things the lazy way. So yes, so now we have a profit. Sorry, we have, okay, so we now have to change this. This is now managers. And this is now sales rep. So there are two ways. I mean, I can, even if I want each manager to see their own, manager will select their own. That's why I always say, like, there are different ways to kill a cat, but the idea of you want your reports to be as smart as possible and as easy to navigate as possible, make it more easier for people to use. So like we're learning drill through. Because I want to use this page as a drill through page, the first thing that I need to do after creating this page, which is a drill through page, I need to come, if you can see here on the visualizations pane where it says add drill through fields here. I'm going to add manager ID. Yeah, I think, I can't remember, is it manager ID or sales rep? I think manager ID. I'm going to put manager ID in this place. So it's asking how drill through when manager ID is used as a category. So this is me saying anywhere in this report where you see manager ID as a category, allow people to drill through to this page from that place. And it's just giving me all the options available for manager ID. So it's already smart, it's already set everything for me. So I will just finish this. So this is done. So now how does it work? We'll go back to managers. Going to be going from page to page. If you come here, if you are manager number 4, you just come, you click on this place. Can you see the moment you click on this place, it's already telling you right click to drill. Further details on how manager 4 is doing. So you right click and then it says drill through. It takes you to the sales rep page. So these are the sales rep. Shows you manager ID is 4 because when we drew through, we came from manager 4. Now, if we go back and we say, okay, we don't want to see, and we can use any of these visuals because both of them have manager. So I can drill through again to sales rep. Now we have the sales reps under manager 1. So this is basically, you're helping your reports to be smarter, you're helping people to be able to. Then the last thing, again, we can do manager 3, drill through to sales rep. The reason why it automatically takes us to sales rep when we click here is because sales rep is the page where you have set that managers should go through. Now, if you create another page and call it, let's say, for example, we want to see like it could be something else. Let me see, product price by sales rep. I'll call this one product price. And you also, again, add manager ID as a drill through field here. What happens then now is when you click, it asks you which of the drill through do you want? Do you want to go to sales rep or you want to go to product price? If you want to go to product price, it takes you to product price. If you go back, you want to go to sales rep, it takes you to sales rep. So you can create as many drill throughs as you need, just to help yourself to like get the best from your report. And it goes both ways. Like I can also create another page. Let me remove this. In place of manager ID here, let me put gender. I don't know whether this is the gender of the sales rep or it's the gender of the customers. But anyway, whatever it is, gender. Let's assume that it's the gender of the customers. So these are the male customers, female customers, and whatnot. I can still come to this place. So I can still create another I can still add gender also as a drill through page, as a drill through. Now I've added gender as a drill through. So every time I come here and I want to see the sales by like only male. Okay, sorry, this doesn't work. I'm overdoing it. This doesn't work because it's not a. Can anybody tell me why it didn't work? I picked the wrong guy. We can't use gender for that. How did I put it there? Can anybody tell me why it didn't work? I've said it in this class today. I didn't even put it as system. Anyway, I would answer it myself if nobody's answering. Gender will not work because gender and sales rep, they don't have like a hierarchy. They're not in a hierarchy. So you really can. Okay, no, it should work because I can do gender and sales rep. It just breaks down. Yeah. Just that all the sales reps sold to females, so it wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't add value. I think the reason it didn't work is this guy didn't drop here for some reason. So let me drop it back. Yeah, when gender is used as category. Yep. So it will still work, just that it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because gender and all of the sales reps sell to all of the genders, so it won't give you too much insights. So this is what is sold to females. And then if you come back, take notes, this is 176, so that you know it's changing. This one was male, then what is sold to female, it's now 121. So yes, it can go both ways. You can tweak it as many times as you want and can just really add context to everything that you're doing or make your reports easier for people to move around. And so yes, that is that on drill throws. Does anybody have a question on drill throws? Question, observation? Done better. Oh, my screen presentation is lagging. Sorry, I'm just seeing that. Does anybody have a question on something that, or a suggestion on something that?
Sorry, maybe it's from her end. She should you could check her internet because it's not lagging from my end anyway. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Franca.
Welcome.
Does anybody have a suggestion?
Franca, I don't think it's only from our end. I was also experiencing the same here. So maybe.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Same thing here.
Okay, but it's okay now, yeah?
Yeah,
it's okay now anyway.
You by using screen is lagging to cover my question. Does anybody have an observation on something we could have done better while we were going from page to page?
How do you mean?
I don't know, maybe just, there's no stupid answer. Just anything that we could have done differently while we were going from one page to another. And like, for example, when I came here, I said, oh, okay, go to sales rep manager 4. And then I had to click this guy to go back to managers. And even when I went here, it's okay, this guy doesn't have true again. Let me change this back to manager ID. Like every time we went there, we had to come back like that. Something we could have done better. Anyways, since nobody has, I will just go straight to this. Something we could have done better will take me to the next module, which is buttons. And I'll go quickly to the presentation. What are buttons in Power BI? Buttons, like the name implies, again, they make for a seamless navigation through the different pages of your report. And there are different buttons in Power BI. All of them have different functions. And we'll go through some of them. We will not go through all of them because there are a lot, but we'll go through some of them and then we would move on. And one thing I just want to say is like buttons are like those, again, like I said the first time, you may not appreciate buttons until you have a report that is 20 pages. When you have a report that is 5 pages, it may be easy for you to just be going, you can always click, like this our report now, it's only 4 pages. So why do you need a button when you can easily just click like this and do what you want to do? But when you have a report that is 10 pages, for example, let me just quickly duplicate these pages first. Duplicates. Now we have plenty pages. You will now start understanding that sometimes it's actually difficult because now you have to scroll this guy, then you have to scroll this one, and then you have to scroll this one like that. It's difficult, and you want to make your report as easy as possible for the people that are using your report. And the first button that I will explain especially is when you do a drill through. So for example, we drill through this guide to sales rep, it brings us here. We want to go back to the main page so that we can see the details for another manager. And if you're unlucky, this page might be here. Maybe this page is here, this sales rep page is here. So now after you came to manager, you drill through for manager 1, you came here. For you to go back, so now you're in sales rep, for you to go back to manager's page, you have to move this guy and then come. Very stressful. So what are the things that you can do? Because again, Power BI is smart, it had automatically put this back button here for us. If it didn't, we would have to put it ourselves. And there are other situations where you want to put buttons on your report. So what this back button does, I'm going to just delete this button and create it myself so that I show us how you can create it if it wasn't automatically created. You come to insert and you can see these buttons here under elements. If you click the drop down arrow, you see an option of all of the buttons that are available. The one we want to use right now is back. And let's look a bit nice. Now, after you create your button, you need to tell it what to do. Even though sometimes they are automatically set, but also sometimes you can modify it to do whatever you want it to do. And the way to do that is to come to action. If it was not on, you toggle it on, and then ask you what type. This is saying what type of action do you want it to do? You want it to go back. And I will quickly explain to us the difference between. Let me delete all these people that I used to do show off. Go back to sales rep. So you have back, you toggle on the action, and then you say you want it to go back. So what this means is every time we come from managers, and then we go to sales rep, once we are done, we don't need to go here to look for managers. You just control and click this guy. It takes us back to this place. And then you can go to the manager 3, you toggle on the back. Please note that when you are in Power BI desktop, you need to use control click for your buttons to work. As guys can see, control plus click here to go back to the previous page. When you publish this report, you don't need to use control, you just click it and it clicks. So control click, it takes us back. Now, there's another button. Before I go to the other ones, I want to insert another button and show us how Power BI may want to like to confuse you. Sometimes you can ask yourself, what's the difference between, okay, before I start explaining this, I want to say that you remember that I said that you can modify the action to really do whatever you want. So like all of the buttons, any button you put here is going to give you the option of all of these actions. And it's left to you to decide which of the actions you want it to take. However, because you are the what you set this button to do. So it is important that when you use buttons, the actions you attach to them make sense. For example, I can actually put this button here. Let me put this back button and left arrow button. I can put this left arrow button here and set it, come to action. Set it that every time they click it, you should do page navigation and it should navigate to sales rep and it will go. So now that I've set it, I'll click it, it navigates to sales rep. So it will work, but does it make sense? Can anybody answer? Does it make sense that when you click this arrow, this back arrow, it takes you to sales rep? Is somebody answering on the chat? Does it make sense? If somebody shares a report with you and it has a back arrow like this, will you expect that when you click it, it will take you to the next page? Nobody is answering me. Okay, somebody has answered. Nope, nobody is answering. No, thank you for the person that answered. So what I'm saying is the fact that Power BI gave you flexibility, that you can shape your buttons and tell your buttons to do whatever you like, it doesn't then mean that you will use them unreasonably. Especially because, like I said, when you build a report, you're not the only person that is going to use it. So you want when people see your report and they see a button, you don't need to explain to them what the button does. They should know. So for example, when you have this kind of arrow, what makes sense is that this arrow would take somebody to duplicate of, let's call this, we'll just call it something. Let's call it something. So what makes sense is that this arrow will take them to the page before this page, which is something. So now I'll program this arrow to say, yes, it's page navigation, but what page should you go to? You should go to something. So now that it makes sense, I will click it and it takes us to something. Then you can then come to something and also have another button, a right arrow, and the right arrow takes you to, of course, usually to the here. Again, you go here, page navigation. Let's call this one. Let's give it a good name to next thing. So what makes sense is that this arrow, what am I going to select here? Type? What type? What type? Somebody should unmute their mic and answer. Page navigation, and to what page?
Next page.
Next thing. So this is just like a reasonable way to use. So now I have these arrows here. And so on all your pages, you can actually have these arrows back and forth so that people don't have to come here to click. But again, this depends on if you have space on your canvas. So you can have these arrows taking people from one page to the other. So now that I've explained that you can customize any button to do anything, I want to explain two buttons that are sometimes similar, look similar, but you can, by best practice, they are used to mean two different things. And those two buttons are left arrow and back. Back is commonly used when you have drill throughs. And why it's commonly used when you have drill throughs is because now, again, as usual, we'll do this back arrow to say the page before this page, customize it to go to page navigation, go to, the right thing is you should go to next thing. Yes, but because this one is peculiar, we want to use it to achieve a purpose. And the purpose is that when people drill through managers, and they come here, we don't want them to have to go and look for manager here to go back to managers. So we leave it as back. Back in this case is not the previous page. Back here is the page where you came from to get to this page. So this back take you back to managers. So the difference between the two is that you do this one to take you to the page that is next to it by arrangement, but you use back to go to the page where you are coming from. So I'll give you an example. If I come from next thing and go here, and I click this guy, click this back, it will take me to next thing because I came from next thing. And if I also click this one is automatically programmed to next thing. But if I come from managers, either I use the drill through or I just come manually, come from managers to sales rep, and I say back. And I say back, take me back to manager. So it takes you to wherever you were coming from. If I come from product price and I go to sales rep and I click back, take me back to where I'm coming from. If I come from something and I go to sales rep and I click back, take me back to where I'm coming from. So the difference between this back is that it doesn't necessarily go to the page before. And when you see in the function, like I said before, that you can customize it to. So the difference between back and page navigation is that page navigation works based on like how your pages are arranged or whatever pages are there. That is how you use page navigation. But back depends on your last action. The last action being where it is called, when you are programming it, it is called back. Basically, just take me back to where I came from. I came from managers. I want to go back to where I came from. That is what back works for. And that's why I said it makes sense to use it for drill throughs. And that's why when I was asking about, is there a better way to do this? So that when people drill through, when people drill through, instead of them struggling to go and look for the page where because now we have seen for manager 1, we want to see for manager 2. Instead of us looking for this manager's page, maybe it's far away, you use this back, takes you back to the manager page, then you can look at manager 2, you go, this guy takes you back, you see you want to see manager 3, you go to manager 3. I want to, like, I'm taking my time to properly explain it because they look alike and they can look as if you can just use them for the same thing. But this is used especially in drill throughs or in any situation where you want to take people back to where they're coming from. While this is just for the normal page navigation of, or go to the previous page on the report or the next page. So that's for those two. We have like a few other buttons. Of course, we've done left arrow and right arrow, we've done back. I will just use do information and page navigator. For information, again, of course, you go to insert buttons and information. This one is really, it can be a lot of things. And of course, as usual, you turn on the action and you say what you want it to do. Usually I use information sometimes for, depending on the kind of report that you did, if you have further information on this report that is somewhere, maybe it's on a website, or maybe it's even the source of the data sets that you're using. This is how I use it in real life scenarios, but you really can use it for anything. Like you can use it to direct people to some other place where there's further information on this thing that you shared. So usually I use it, I usually insert, the most common use cases that I have used it for is when I use data that I got from a website to build a report. Yeah, so let's try an example. Let's put www.google.com and just insert it there. So every time people click this, it takes them to google.com, and we'll just try it. So I'll click this. It's not clicking. Why is it not clicking? Okay, maybe the URL is not typed properly. You know what I will do? I will go to Google and copy a random website, Wikipedia. So now click this guy. See, it takes us to Wikipedia. So that is the most common use case, but you can really put anything in there, anything that you feel like can give people further information on the reports that you have done on that page. That is when you use this information button. But like I said, it's flexible. You can use it for a lot of things or for whatever you want. And this tooltip basically customizes what shows when people hover over this guy. So if you say website for further details, when people see it, they see website for further details. So that way, it just also helps them to understand what this button is doing here. So how to do the tooltip is click under the action. You just type whatever you want it to show. You type it here. So every time you click, and like I was saying, you can also add tooltips to all your buttons. So especially like this one we were using for manager, you can add a tooltip here that says go back to manager's tab. So go back to manager's tab. Every time people over, they say, okay, this guy takes you back to manager's tab. It's just something that sort of adds flexibility and add spice to your report. And of course, I think this will also be good I think this improves accessibility. If your report is being used by like maybe blind people or stuff, you will read out what this guy does for them. The final button that I will use today is navigator. You're wondering why we need navigator when we already had all these buttons we're using for page navigation. It's just because, again, in Power BI, there are 1 million ways to kill a rat. So if you click this navigator and you select a page navigator, you'll have this guy. This guy basically has all the pages in your report. And I think the fantastic use case for this is to have like an outline page on your reports. So you say page navigator. That way, everything on this page is just like when you do a report writing and you have table of contents. So people want to go to managers, they can go to managers. Of course, that means you then have to have a back here that will always take people back to page 1. So you want to go to duplicate of quantity, it is duplicate of quantity. You want to go to next thing, takes you to the next thing. Want to go to sales rep, takes you to sales rep. So that's basically what the page navigator does. But like I said, this would only make sense if you then have back buttons here that directs people back every time to this is like a table of contents, if you ask me. It's your table of contents, and you can design it anyhow you want. We're not doing data visualization today, so I wouldn't go into those details. You can design it anyhow you want, styles you can use, and all of that. So if you want it to be a see, can look better like a table of contents. You can really design it to look anyhow you want it to look. Want it to be parallel, want it to be. So all of this just makes your report like, it gives it that seamless flow, how your report should work and how your report should look like. So that is that on buttons. I'm going to change this page to table of contents. Anybody have any question on buttons, slicers, sync slicers, and drill trace? I'm going to give assignment too. So if I'm not asking question, just have it at the back of your mind that I'm going to give assignment. Does anybody have question on buttons, slicers, or everything that we've covered today so far? Before I go to the next part. Nobody. Does this mean that we are not understanding or that we are understanding too much? Like we understand it so well that there's no question. Okay, I'll go with the latter. You understand it too well that there's no questions. This is actually the end of the storytelling part. The other things we are covering, optimizing for mobile view and publishing to Power BI service, is practical. There's no story on it. So I'll just go straight and show us how to optimize your report for mobile view. I don't know if anybody remembers in our first class when we were talking about Power BI offerings. I remember we mentioned that Power BI actually has a mobile app. So when I publish this report and I share it, for example, with my boss can, if my boss is not on their system at that time, they can open the report on their Power BI mobile app. But I think if you remember on some websites or if you are viewing a website on your phone, there's a way it looks. If you don't like the way it looks on your mobile, then you go and click desktop view. When you change it to desktop view, the way it shows is also different. And that's because when that website was being built, they built it that if the person is on mobile, this thing should arrange like this. if the person is on desktop, this thing should arrange like this. And if you don't build it like that, if somebody on mobile is trying to view something on desktop view, the person would not have a good experience. And because like everything that I've been saying since, the user experience of the people using your reports is important to you, you want to optimize the reports that, okay, if somebody is viewing this report on a mobile phone, this is how you should arrange it for the person. So what do you do when you want to create a mobile view of your report? You go to view, of course, mobile view. You go to view, and the moment you go to view, you see this mobile layout, and already it tells you design your report for mobile devices. So it is this same report, but if somebody is viewing it on a phone, this is how I want it to look like for the person. So you click this guy. Got it. I know what I'm doing before. So when you click this guy, basically shows you something that looks like a phone and shows you all the pages of your reports too. What did I do? Okay, it gives you a mobile phone and gives you all the pages of your reports. So this is more like a Corel Draw all over again. You are going to arrange all your visuals how you want somebody to see it if they were viewing it from a mobile phone. So you have to be dragging these guys one after the other. Okay, because this is one visual, so basically I can just say, so this one will be like this on the person's phone. I want it to be longer to occupy the whole screen of the phone, or however I want it to be. Then I finish with page 1. I'll go to the next page. Okay, how do I want this next page to look? I'll try to design it in a way that the person can see the thing very well, even though they are using their phone. So this guy will be here. This guy will be under it. And then the slicer, of course, will be on top. I think that's okay. The person can scroll it. So you just continue like that. So this is page 2. I don't know if this guy is smart. There's page 2. Go to page 3. You arrange it so how you want the person to see it. Remember, this is our slicer that we hid. We don't need to put it. Just put the button in one corner there. And this button will work whether the person is on mobile or on anything. This button will work the same way it's working in the desktop view. So you go to this one to do the same thing. This Q&A was actually a mistake. I don't know what's here. Let me leave it. Come here, you do the same thing. As many visuals as you have and as many pages as you have to arrange them like this. So that's it. What this means is that when you publish this report and you share it to somebody, and the person opens it on their phone, this is how they will see it. Size long. And you see that, like, even if it's long, the way it works on the phone is the person can continue scrolling it. So don't be worried that, oh, what if I have lots of chats on my reports? Will it enter the phone? It will continue scrolling. As many chats as you have on the page, you'll be able to put them on the mobile view. Put this one here. And put this information guide to here. So this is basically just like, this is just Canva. This is just you designing your report, how you want people to see it. If anybody knows more UI UX, can come in handy here to help you to know how to arrange things. So that's why in Power BI you also need to learn it, to know how to arrange these things in such a way that it will be easy for people to use. Can move this guy. So yeah, I'm done with all the pages. And you can and go back to file. Sorry. Okay, if you want to go back to your desktop layout, you just click here, switch to desktop layout. But because we already have a mobile layout set up, every time if you just change it to mobile layout, it shows you the mobile layout that you set up. Shows you the mobile layout that you set up. If you want to go back to desktop, go back to desktop. I think I put this Q&A, but I missed it.
Okay,
Someone
so
have a question?
Yes, I was going to ask, for the arrangement of the mobile layout, does it mean we have to do it manually like this all the time?
Yes. Yes.
A shortcut
I don't know.
or
I don't know a smarter way to do it yet. Maybe if somebody in the class knows, but
all right.
you have to do it like that. So now that we're done arranging our mobile layout, does anybody have another question on the mobile layout? Before I go to the next thing is basically just how to publish your reports to Power BI service. Before I do the how to publish your report to Power BI service, can anybody remind us, I know it's been covered in this class, can anybody remind us why you even want to publish your reports to Power BI service? Why can't you just leave it on your desktop? Why go through the hassle? Anybody? Why do nobody is answering?
That's an easy one.
Okay, I think
If you want to publish it, why do you publish your report?
Okay, somebody said it can be accessible. Moduka was about to say something.
yeah, if you have only your Power BI desktop, it's only available in local gadgets. But for someone else to be able to access it, I think you have to publish Power BI service.
Okay. It's only Moduka that's answering my question today. It's like I'll give her prize or I'll call somebody's name to answer a question. Because they are like, how many people in this class? 18. And only 2 people have been talking since.
Okay, but somebody said it can be accessible.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yes, Academy. Yes. Yeah.
I saw that.
Okay.
Okay, it's all right. I'll make do with the person that answered me. Like everybody has said, the reason why it's good to publish your report on Power BI service is that Your report can be accessible anytime and anywhere, and also that's the only way you can share it with people. For example, even though you can say, oh, even if I want to share with someone, I can send them the PBIX file, the way I would share a Microsoft Excel document. But the drawback of that is because Power BI is not like Microsoft Word that everybody has. If you share a PBIX file with somebody, there's a chance that the person does not even have Power BI installed on their laptop. But if you publish your report to Power BI service and you share the link with somebody, either in your organization or the person can view the report live without having to download Power BI desktop. The person can view the report live, and then when you make changes to the report, you don't need to start telling the person that, oh, I'm sending you the updated version. You just update it live there, and the person uses the same link to continue to access it. And the one I actually like the most for me, even when I'm doing my practice reports that I'm not intending to share with anybody, I always publish them to service, because what that means is that my report is available anytime, anywhere. If anything happens to my laptop, like I've changed laptop like 3 times, I don't have to be looking for my old Power BI files because all of them are in my Power BI service. And from there, I can download it, I can share it, I can do whatever I want with it. So the advantages are endless. Like download your reports, be uploading your report to Power BI service has so many advantages. And also there are times that you and somebody can even be working on a report together in your company. Instead of both of you to have to be sending it to yourselves, you just have it on service. When one person finishes their own aspect of the work, you go and continue your own. And when we, I think in the intermediate class, when we go deeper into Power BI service, you will see like a lot more functionalities that are only available after you have published your report to Power BI service. So what do you need to do? How do you publish your report to Power BI service? The first thing before you can publish your report is that you need to have a Microsoft account. If you look here, you see where it says I should sign in. You need to have a Microsoft account and create an account in Power BI service with that account. So now if I sign in here, is asking me to enter my email address. I would enter my olayinka.styler@stylus. So this is my Microsoft email address, Stylus. Yeah, I have to pick it again. It's asking me which of my accounts I want to use. I have to pick it again. Because I already put my password and everything before, normally it will ask you for password and everything. So now you can say I've already signed in. Olayinka Styler is signed in. So now the next thing is to publish. Okay, I have not saved the report or given it a name, so I need to save it and give it a name. Let's call it class. This class is class 5. I think so. Class 5 textiles. So save it as textiles class 5. Then I would click on, from home here, you can see this publish button. So I will click on publish. Please understand that as I'm signed into this account and I publish it into this account, when I'm logging into Power BI online, I need to sign in with this account for me to see the report. So I'll publish it because again, in my Power BI account, in Power BI, I have different workspaces. So I have this my workspace, I have this DA100. It's asking me which of the workspaces that I want to publish it to. Again, what is the real life application of this? If you are in an organization, usually what happens is different departments will have different workspaces. So sales has their own workspace, IT has their own workspace, customer service has their own workspace. So if the report you are building is for sales, you cannot go and put it inside IT workspace. but because this is just sample, I'll publish it to my workspace. So it will take a while depending on how strong my internet is, but when it's done, it will tell me that my report has been published. Okay, success. So it's asking me, do I want to open it? If I click this open, what it does is it takes me straight to Power BI online. So let me see whether it will go. I don't think I'm logged in. So ask me to sign in again. Okay, now enter my email. I hope I remember my password. Wow. I like that one because you remembered the password for me, but this time I have to remember the password. Okay, I have it somewhere. I know I'm not the only one that doesn't remember passwords, but God will help us. So I just want to show us like when you publish your report to Power BI service, it's going to look exactly like it looked in your Power BI desktop. Everything is the same. So you can see the report, you can see all the pages, managers, product price, and all of those things. And all the buttons also function the way they should function. So if we want to like use our drill through, you right click, you drill through sales rep, your back button takes you back to manager. You remember how I said in Power BI service, clicking those buttons, life is easier to click buttons in Power BI service than in desktop. Because in desktop you have to do control click. Here you just click it and it goes back. Go to manager 3, product price, okay, goes back like that. So it functions exactly the same way as it is in your Power BI desktop. And two things I just want to say here is in Power BI service, when you publish your report to Power BI service, there are two things that come to Power BI service, and I'll show you. Let's go home. Normally, if you just log into your Power BI service, this is where you will come to. Where's that good afternoon used to say? This thing is rude. It's not greeting me again. Does it say good afternoon, Laika? Anyways, you guys remember that I had two different workspaces. So if you come here, you see all your workspaces. There's my workspace and then there's DA100. Who remember where I published it to? Where did I publish it to?
Workspace.
My workspace. So every time you publish a report, there are two things that move. These are all the old reports that I've published before. Let me sort it by, let's see sorting please. Let's just look for it. Textilers class 5. So you can see there are two things. There's Textilers class 5 reports. Then there's Textilers class 5 data sets. The reason is because the data set is a different entity. Well, I won't say it's a different entity, but the data set is, let me open it so that we'll see it. The data set is basically like the Excel file that we imported. So if you open the data set, you will just see all these things. Because these are all the columns that we had in the data sets. That's what you see. But if you go back, you click on the report, you see the report itself. And the reason why it publishes all of them separately is because both of them separately is because you can actually, you remember we said Power BI service is good for collaboration. You can actually use this data set to create another brand new report that is different from the one you published. So if I come here and click create a report that I want to auto create and start from scratch, we do auto create, it creates something for us that it feels like it's nice to see. Power BI always thinks that it is smart. So let me create this auto report. So Power BI has used that to create reports for us. Another report. We can save this report. You can save this report. Got it now. You can save this report and call it whatever we like. Auto create. Let me call it auto create. Again, it's in my workspace. Of course, I save it. So why, like I was explaining, why you publish the data sets and the reports separately is because they are like separate entities and they really can, not that they are entirely separate entities, but you can use the data sets to create a bunch of other reports. So you see now that when I now click on the data sets, it shows me all the reports that are under that data set. The original one that we published, and also the one you created for us, which is auto create. We now have 2 reports under that data set. This does not affect my original report. My original report is there, it's fine. Just I will now have plenty of other reports under this data set. I think it's also important for me to mention that this data set now is now like the lifeline of those 2 reports. If anything happens to this data set, those 2 reports are gone. For example, if I delete this data set, those 2 reports are gone. If I change this data set, the source of it, if I change this data set from the source, which is on my desktop, and the source can be anything, it can be SQL, it can be a database. If I change this data set and I refresh it, everything in those 2 reports changes and you update to whatever is now on the data set. That's why your data set is like the lifeblood of your report. And also your data set, then the reason why again Power BI service is good, if your data set is one that is constantly changing, every time you change, you just refresh it. As you can see here, it's showing me the last time it was refreshed. You can always keep updating your data set, and whatever reports is created from that data set will continue to update. I don't know if that makes some sense. So yeah, these are all the reports that I've ever created. It tells you the owner is when it was last refreshed and all the other details about the data sets. Like I said, every other thing about Power BI service, I'm almost encroaching into where I shouldn't be going to. But every other thing we'll cover in the intermediate class. But yes, this is our original baby report. And this is where I said, like, you can share it with your team members. You can present it in a Teams meeting. You can do, yeah, a bunch of things. Does anybody have a question on publishing your report to Power BI service? Does anybody have a question? Nobody, Abby? Okay, let me go to our assignment. Maybe we know when I say I will do something, I will do it. And anyway, let me also explain that I think I said that if you change something in the data set and you refresh it, you update the report, all the reports under that data set. However, your reports, you still have the report on your desktop, even though you published it, it doesn't mean that it has flown away. Your report on your desktop is a different entity from your report in the cloud. And what do I mean? If I add an additional page to this report and call it additional, and I save it, I hope you know that it doesn't mean that the one on cloud will now have additional. Because this thing is only my desktop that knows that I did additional. So the one on the cloud will not have additional. But what do I need to do? I just need to publish again. When I publish again, as long as the name is the same and I publish it into that same workspace, it will then ask me that this is going to impact an old report. Do I want to replace it? I will say yes. Then it will replace it. If you want something to be changed in your report that is in the cloud, you need to actually go and change it in the cloud. So you come here, you say edit, and then you can make changes to your report. Unfortunately, there's a limit to the kind of changes that you can make on the cloud. Even though there have been improvements to it, but there are still some things. For example, you cannot create measures in the cloud. So many times, depending on the level of changes you want to make, if it's just small editing errors, you can do it in service and then you just save it and then you go back to your reading view. But if you change something on your desktop, you have to republish it for the one on the cloud to update to what is on your desktop. It is only the data set that you can change and then just refresh. But with the report itself, you need to either change it here, or when you change it on your desktop, you have to publish it for it to work. Because your cloud and your desktop, they are not really talking like that. They are talking, but they are not talking in real time. So yeah, that's about that. I'm still using Style to see if anybody has a question. But if not, I will go to homework. Okay. Homework incoming. Homework. I'll spell homework. Is a blank button. And you know, I cannot not ask when to use something. So let me add Power BI so that people will not pretend as if they don't know what to say. What is the blank button in Power BI and when do you use it? Homework. What is a blank button? I know I said there are lots of buttons. We'll cover some, but we will not cover all of them. So one of the buttons is a blank button. What is it and when do you use it? That is our homework for next week. Please, let's do the homework. Next week, before we start whatever we're doing, at least 5 people will answer this question before we start. And yeah, that's that about that. I want to remind us of what we are having next week. It's been in the curriculum and I've also been talking about it. Next week, we are going to have a live build along session. And what do I mean by that? Yes, we've been doing, everything we've been doing is practical and all of that. But for next week, we're going to share a data set. I'll share it latest by tomorrow. I'll share it on the Teams chat and on the Discord channel. I'm going to share a data set. And next week, all of us are going to be working on our systems. As the tutor is doing something, we will expect you to also do it. And we will randomly, the only way I will know if you are doing it, we'll randomly ask people to share their screen and show us where they are at. The reason why we want to do that is we want to give you an opportunity to build something while we are online and supporting you, so that if you are stuck at any point, you can share your screen and show us. And I can promise you that this will make more impact than any other thing that you have been doing. The reason is because it's like learning how to sew or learning how to plait hair. If you're watching somebody plaiting hair, it will look as if it's even easy, I can do it. Until when you try to do it, that's when you see that it's not easy. So the best way to learn something is not by watching somebody do it alone, but by actually doing it. So I'm going to share the data set tomorrow. We're going to have that session next week. Hopefully we would also not exceed 2 hours. We will try to limit the again that we are doing so that we will not sleep there. All our in any challenges that you will be having, and I hope that you will take advantage of it as much as we will. Afterwards, we are going to have all of you submit the file, PBIX file, of what you did that day. You can either submit it or you can publish it and share a link with us, anyone that works for you. But you're going to have to submit whatever you do that day. We're going to use it to just see how well you understood everything that we've been doing in the past, I think 6 weeks. So, yep. You tried it on your own and you got stuck. I thought we said that if you get stuck, ask questions on the Discord channel or on the Teams channel. Anyway, I will share the file. I will share the file tomorrow. I would also share the link to download Power BI Desktop, even though I don't want to believe that there's anybody in this class who doesn't have Power BI Desktop installed. But I'll share all of the links. And look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you to all our mentors, Franca, Choma, Lolia, and Gloria. Thank you for your time. Thank you to the students, of course, for showing up. You're the reason why we're here. Yes, I will share the link to download it I'll share it on the Discord channel. Let me just look for it. Someone shared it last week. Let me look for it again. And Ofon, I'll just call you Ofon so that I don't scatter your name. Please, if you have specific issues when you're trying to download, be sure to share a screenshot or something so that somebody will guide you, because I just noticed that you also said this last week. So if you have specific issues, share a screenshot so that somebody can help you. And please also note that Power BI is not available for Mac.